I saw my daughter kissing a boy, not a little peck on the cheek, not the kind of kiss you give your grandmother when she gives you $20 on your birthday. No, I saw my 14-year-old daughter kissing a boy outside of her school like she had just stepped into some teenage rom-com and decided to become the main character. I wasn't spying. Let me be clear about that. I was early, that's all. I was early because I had finished work ahead of time and thought, hey, why not surprise her and pick her up for ice cream? That's what moms do, right? We try. We show up. We imagine hugs and smiles and, maybe, if the stars align, a thanks, Mom. But instead, I parked the car, looked through the windshield, and there she was. Her hands on his face, his hands on her waist. The kiss. It was happening. My heart didn't stop. It jumped. It panicked. It screamed. And then it whispered something I didn't expect. She's not a little girl anymore. I sat there frozen, gripping the steering wheel like it could somehow rewind time. I didn't know if I should honk, roll down the window, or duck so she wouldn't see me watching. I felt like a spy in my own life, a really bad one, the kind who never asked for this mission. Now, let me pause here and say, I've read the books. I follow the experts. I know the adolescent brain is practically soup at this age. They're ruled by impulse, emotions, hormones, a chaotic cocktail shaken, not stirred. Their frontal cortex, the part that controls judgment, isn't even close to being fully developed. I know all of that, but none of that changes how it feels to witness your baby, your once toothless, Dora the Explorer obsessed, cuddly little girl, lock lips with someone who shaves. I felt 100 emotions at once. Jealousy, panic, nostalgia, pride, maybe guilt for feeling jealous, guilt for wanting to scream, guilt for not knowing what the right reaction even was. So I did what any unprepared mom does. I drove off. Yep. I turned the key, pulled away, and parked 2 blocks down. I needed a moment to breathe, to collect myself, to Google how to talk to your teen about kissing without sounding like a freaked-out Victorian mother. Nothing useful came up. Instead, I remembered something a therapist once told me during one of those "Am I ruining her life?" sessions. Your child isn't a copy of you. She's her own person, growing into herself. Your job isn't to control that. It's to stay close enough to guide, but far enough to let her walk her own path. Easy to say, so hard to do. And you know what's worse? A part of me wasn't just scared of her kissing. I was scared of what it meant for me. That maybe my job as her everything was changing. That I was becoming background noise to a life she was now writing for herself. I sat there with my iced coffee, now just melted sadness in a cup, and tried to decide how I'd bring it up. Do I mention I saw her? Pretend I didn't? Ask casually about anything interesting happened today? Like I didn't see her lips on someone else's child? But before we dive into this thrilling story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit like so that YouTube can show you more content like this. By the time she got in the car, cheeks flushed and eyes glowing in that post-something energy, I had made a decision. I would pretend nothing happened. For now, not because I didn't want to talk, but because I wanted her to bring it up first. I wanted to create space, not suspicion. And maybe, just maybe, she would trust me enough to step into it. She climbed in, buckled her seatbelt, and said, "Can we get bubble tea?" My heart did a little dance. She was still her, a new version, but still my girl. "Sure," I said, putting the car in drive. "Tell me about your day." And so she did. But not the kiss. Not yet. That would come later. And when it did, I wasn't ready. I didn't sleep that night. I mean, I tried. I did all the things. Tea, no screens, a podcast about breathing, which honestly just made me hyper-aware of how weird my breathing is when someone tells me to think about it. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Lara and that boy. Her hands on his face. That look on her face. It wasn't guilty. It wasn't shy. It was sure, confident, comfortable in her own skin in a way that felt foreign to me, like she had stepped ahead on the timeline of her life and forgotten to tell me she was skipping chapters. At some point around 3 a.m, I got out of bed and went into the kitchen. I didn't turn the light on, just stood there in the faint blue glow of the microwave clock, hugging my own arms like I needed someone, anyone, to hold me together. It sounds dramatic, I know, but that's the thing they don't tell you about parenting. You don't just raise a child, you grieve them, little by little, as they change. Every growth spurt, every independence gained, is a goodbye to the version of them you just got used to loving. I kept hearing her little toddler voice in my head. "Mommy, wait for me." She used to say that whenever I walked ahead in the grocery store, and now it felt like I was the one whispering it, only she didn't hear me. I finally caved and opened the freezer, pulled out an old box of frozen waffles, and ate one cold like some kind of maternal raccoon. I leaned against the counter and thought about my own teenage years. Who was I at 14? I remember being desperate to grow up, wearing makeup that didn't match, listening to songs that made me feel things I couldn't explain, lying about where I was going just to sit with friends on a curb and talk about boys we were all too scared to actually talk to. And my mother? God, she was so strict. Everything was forbidden. No sleepovers with boys, no dating, no crop tops, no opinions too loud. And yet, I still kissed a boy at 15, behind a library. His name was Daniel. He had braces and smelled like bubble gum and fear. I thought I was in love for a week, and then forgot his birthday the next. But when it comes to Lara, it doesn't feel like just a kiss. It feels like the beginning of a world I can't control. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen making toast like a soldier on standby. Lara walked in, hair in a bun, headphones around her neck, phone in her hand, scrolling, always scrolling, and said, "Hey," like nothing monumental had happened. "Hey," I said, trying to sound breezy, casual, not obsessed with the fact that my daughter was now officially someone who kisses people on sidewalks. "You're up early," she added. "I never went to sleep." "Why?" I paused. "Because you're growing up, and it's terrifying, and I want to wrap you in bubble wrap and slow down time. And also, I'm trying not to be a helicopter parent, so you don't end up in therapy, blaming me for everything." Instead, I said, "Stress, work, you know." She nodded, but she wasn't really listening. She was typing something on her phone, probably to the boy. My brain did a full gymnastics routine. Who was he? Did he respect her? Was he older? What was his family like? Was he emotionally intelligent? Did he know how lucky he was to be kissed by someone I raised with every cell in my body? I knew I had to say something that would open the door. Not a lecture, not a judgment, just a crack in the wall between us. "So," I started, handing her a piece of toast. "Anything interesting happen yesterday?" She shrugged. "Not really. Just school stuff. Just school stuff." That's what she called it. I studied her face. Not in a creepy way. I mean, maybe a little. But in the way moms do when we're searching for signs. Guilt. Excitement. Something. But all I saw was a calm confidence I hadn't seen before. Not cocky. Just her. Owning her space. I wanted to push. I really did. But something in me stopped. Maybe it was the therapist's voice again in my head. Or maybe it was because deep down, I knew this wasn't about the kiss. Not really. It was about the shift. The quiet, invisible one where your child stops orbiting you and starts spinning on their own axis. She finished her toast, grabbed her bag, and kissed me on the cheek. "I'll see you after school." "Yeah," I said, and smiled. "I'll be there." "Cool," she replied, and walked out the door like it was any other day. And maybe it was, but not for me. After she left, I stood in the kitchen a little longer. I could still feel the warmth of her goodbye kiss on my cheek. It was small, but it meant something. It was a reminder that while she was stepping forward, she hadn't completely stepped away. That afternoon, I picked her up like usual. No surprise appearances, no emotional ambushes, just a mom, waiting. And I noticed something. She looked for me when she came out, scanned the crowd, and when she saw me, she smiled. That smile. It saved me that day. Not because it fixed anything, but because it reminded me that I'm still part of her story, even if the chapters are getting more complicated. Later that week, the conversation happened. She brought it up, but I'll tell you about that in the next part. And let me warn you, it wasn't what I expected. It happened on a Thursday. The conversation, the one I'd been dreading and rehearsing in my head like it was a courtroom trial, and I had to defend my sanity to a jury of imaginary psychologists and progressive parenting bloggers. I had spent the entire week on edge, waking up too early, staring too long at nothing, and Googling terms like teenage dating boundaries and How to ask your daughter if she's in love without scaring her into silence. I had told myself I'd wait for her to bring it up, that I'd be calm, modern, cool. But patience is a muscle I've never been great at training. By Thursday, the silence between us felt like a hallway with 100 closed doors. I wanted to knock on just one, just open one, just enough to peek inside and know that I still had a place in her mind. But of course, the moment didn't come at home, or in the car, or during one of our rare and sacred movie nights. No, it came while I was cleaning the bathroom. I had just finished scrubbing the mirror, one of those basic mom tasks that somehow feels therapeutic in a weird, passive-aggressive way, when she walked in, leaned on the doorframe, and said it. "So, you saw me, didn't you?" There was no context, no preamble, just that. I froze, rag in one hand, spray bottle in the other, mid-wipe. I turned to face her, blinking like I'd been caught in the act of something I wasn't supposed to witness. "You mean, outside school?" She raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, that." I exhaled, slowly, carefully, like I was defusing a bomb. "Yeah, I saw you." And then there was a silence that lasted no more than 3 seconds, but felt like one of those movie scenes where time slows down and everything becomes dramatic in grayscale. She looked down, fiddling with the edge of her sleeve. "I thought so. You left fast." That hit me harder than it should have. She noticed. She knew. And suddenly, I wasn't the silent observer. I was part of the scene. My absence was as loud as my presence might have been. "I didn't know what to do," I admitted, voice soft. "I wasn't expecting that." She nodded. "Yeah, I figured." Then she sat down on the edge of the tub, still looking at her hands, and added, "His name is Kaio. We're not, together, but we've been talking for a while." Talking. The famous Gen Z word that means anything from texting memes to emotionally involved and might as well be married. I resisted the urge to ask a million questions. Instead, I sat on the toilet lid, facing her, not as an interrogator, as a mom trying really hard to stay on the same team. "Can I ask you something?" I said. She shrugged. "Sure. How do you—" "I don't know. Know you're ready for that. For kissing. For being with someone like that." She looked up then, and her answer was so honest it almost made me cry. "I don't think I know. I just felt okay in the moment. Like I trusted him. And I felt like me. Not like I was trying to impress anyone. It just happened. And it didn't feel wrong. God. I wanted to hold her right then. Wrap her up in every blanket in the house and whisper, "You're still little. You're still little. Please stay little a bit longer." But I didn't. I stayed where I was. I nodded. I listened. "That's really mature," I said, and I meant it. But part of me hated how true it was. Then she looked at me, really looked, and asked the question I wasn't ready for. "Are you mad at me?" And right there, in that small, tiled, bleach-scented room, I had a choice. I could hide behind rules, fear, the need to be in control, or I could tell her the truth, the messy, real truth. "I'm not mad," I said, my voice catching. "I'm overwhelmed, not because you did something wrong, but because I wasn't ready to see you that grown up. You're still my baby in my head, and watching you kiss someone, it's like watching you step into a life I'm not leading with you anymore, and that's hard. For me." She didn't say anything right away, but she didn't run either. She just sat there, absorbing it, and then she said something I'll never forget. "You know I still need you, right?" Tears. Instantly. Stupid. Involuntary. Mother tears. I covered my face with my hand and laughed a little through the cry. "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that." She smiled, stood up, came over and gave me one of those hugs that makes time stop. The kind where you realize your kid isn't slipping away. They're just stretching out, making space for themselves. And maybe, if you're lucky, making space for you too. We stood there for a while, and I didn't say anything more about Kaio, or the kiss, or any of it, because I realized something important. She didn't need me to fix anything. She just needed me to be there. And I was. Still am. Of course, that moment didn't magically fix all the chaos that comes with parenting a teenager. It was just one day, one conversation, one step in a much longer walk. But it was a good step, an honest one. And a few days later, I'd be tested again. in a way I didn't see coming. Because one afternoon, Lara came home crying, and that opened a whole new chapter I wasn't ready for either. I heard her crying before I even opened the door. It was one of those deep, hiccuping cries, the kind that twists your stomach because you know it's not about something small. It wasn't, "I forgot my homework," or "my favorite shirt shrunk in the wash." This was the kind of crying that makes a mother freeze mid-step, every nerve suddenly tuned to a single frequency. My child is hurting. She had let herself in. She had a key, of course, and dropped her backpack by the door. When I stepped inside, she was curled up on the couch, face hidden in her arms, hair falling messily around her shoulders. "Lara," I said gently, already walking toward her, heart hammering in my chest. She didn't answer, just shook her head and pulled her knees closer to her chest. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a bad day. This was something. I sat down next to her slowly, not touching her yet, not pushing, just being there. That's the thing no one really tells you about motherhood. Sometimes your greatest strength is knowing when to stay silent, when your presence is more powerful than your words. After a long pause, I said softly, "Tell me what happened. When you're ready." She lifted her face just enough for me to see her eyes, red, swollen, rimmed with tears, and then she crumbled into my arms. No pride, no distance, just my daughter, the same girl who once cried when her goldfish died, sobbing now in a way that made me want to go out and destroy whatever caused it. "It's Kaio," she finally whispered. And just like that, I knew. My brain, like a computer from the early 2000s, began loading every possible scenario at once. He broke up with her. He said something cruel. He told someone about the kiss. He ghosted her. Worse, maybe he humiliated her. I took a deep breath and said the only thing I could. "What did he do?" She sat up a little, wiping her nose on her sleeve, and I didn't even care. "Let it be gross. Let it be real. He posted a picture," she said, voice cracking, "with another girl, holding hands, and she commented something like, 'Finally,' and he replied with hearts, like we didn't exist, like we never even talked. After everything, my chest physically ached, because I remembered, God, I remembered being that age, and realizing that someone you'd let into your little private emotional world could just walk away, like it meant nothing, like you meant nothing. "I'm so sorry, baby," I said, brushing her hair back, kissing her temple. "I feel so stupid," she snapped suddenly, pulling away. I knew he wasn't perfect. I knew he wasn't even that serious, but I liked him. I trusted him, and now everyone at school's probably seeing it and laughing at me. I feel like such an idiot. "You're not an idiot," I said firmly. "You were brave. You took a risk. You felt something real. That's not stupid. That's human." She shook her head. "You don't get it. It's not like when you were a teenager. Everything's online now. Everything's public. Everyone knows everything. I can't just go to school tomorrow and pretend nothing happened. They've already seen it." And there it was. A truth I hadn't fully faced yet. Her adolescence isn't just a rerun of mine. It's a whole new world. A world where pain is broadcast, and heartbreak comes with likes and comments and screenshots that never die. "I do get it," I said quietly. "Not in the exact same way, but I remember what it felt like to be discarded. I remember what it felt like to feel invisible to someone who had once made you feel special." She looked at me then, really looked, and asked something no teenager asks lightly. "Did it happen to you?" I nodded. "Yes, I was 15. His name was Daniel. He kissed me behind the school library and told me he liked me. 3 days later, he was holding hands with a girl in my math class and pretending I didn't exist. What did you do?" I cried, I said honestly, for hours. I told my mom, and she told me it was puppy love and that I'd get over it. But she didn't really listen, so I promised myself that if I ever had a daughter and she came home crying over a boy, I'd do better. She blinked. "You just did." And just like that, I almost cried again. Because in that moment, sitting on our worn-out couch, with a crumpled tissue between us and my daughter's world temporarily in pieces, I realized something huge. She didn't need me to be perfect. She just needed me to show up, to be there. I didn't offer advice, not right away. I didn't say, "You'll find someone better," or "He wasn't worth it," though I was absolutely thinking it, with some colorful language attached. Instead, I just sat with her. We ordered noodles. We watched something silly. We let the hurt breathe without trying to smother it. Later that night, when I was in bed, I opened her bedroom door just a crack. She was asleep, curled up, mascara still faintly smudged under her eyes, and all I could think was how vulnerable she still was. Even with all her independence, her headphones, her sarcasm, her grown-up kisses and heartbreaks, she was still my girl, and now I knew something even more important. I didn't have to protect her from every pain. I just had to be the one she ran to after it hit. But of course, motherhood doesn't let you stay in one emotional space for long. There's always another shift around the corner. And mine came a week later, in the form of a phone call from the school. Because apparently, Lara had been skipping class, and she hadn't told me a thing. The phone rang at exactly 9:43 in the morning. I was in the middle of a work meeting, pretending to be more interested than I actually was, when I saw the school's number flash across my screen. That cold, official-looking name with a landline number underneath it always makes my stomach twist. Schools only call for 2 reasons: some boring administrative update or a problem. And mothers know. We feel it. Before I even answered, I already knew it wasn't a reminder about uniforms or school fees. Hello? Good morning. Is this Lara's mother? Yes. Speaking. Is everything okay? There was a pause. Subtle, but long enough to set off every maternal alarm in my body. Nothing urgent. Don't worry. It's just an administrative matter. We've noticed that Lara has been missing some of her classes over the past 2 weeks, and we were wondering if there's anything going on at home, or if perhaps there's a health issue we should be aware of. Missing classes? The words echoed in my head like a siren. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? Which classes exactly? The woman on the phone continued in a perfectly neutral tone, almost robotic, listing 3 different mornings when Lara hadn't shown up to her first period, and 2 days when she apparently didn't return after lunch. But she left the house, I thought. She left with her backpack, in uniform, with her lunch. She said goodbye like any other day. Oh, yes, I'll talk to her about it, I said, forcing a smile into my voice, trying to sound composed. Thank you for letting me know. When I hung up, I just sat there for a second, staring at the phone, feeling something heavy settle over me. She had lied, or omitted, which, if you're a mother, you know is the same thing. And more than being worried about missing schoolwork or discipline, what really stung, what cut deeper than I wanted to admit, was the question that started forming in my head. Why didn't she tell me? The rest of the day was a blur. I tried to focus on work, tried to reason through it. Maybe it was something isolated. Maybe she was embarrassed. Maybe she just needed space. And then, of course, I spiraled into the usual guilt. Was I too strict? Too relaxed? Too emotionally present? Not present enough? Did I push too hard after the breakup with Kayo? I got home before her that day. I sat on the couch, phone in my lap, heart in my throat, waiting. She walked in like any other day, kicked off her shoes, dropped her backpack, said, "Hey," without looking up. My throat tightened. "Lara," I said, not loud, not angry, just enough weight in my tone to make her stop mid-step. She turned. "Yeah? Did something happen at school?" Her brows pulled together. "What do you mean?" "They called me today," I said. "They said you've missed several classes, that you left campus during the day." Her face froze, just for a second, but I saw it. "You're serious?" I asked. "Is that true?" She didn't answer right away. She looked away, tugged at her sleeve. That was all the answer I needed. "I didn't want to worry you," she finally mumbled. "But you knew I'd find out." She hesitated. "Not necessarily. The school hardly ever calls. I figured it would be fine. You thought lying to me would be fine." "I didn't lie," she snapped. "I just didn't tell you. You said you were going to school and you weren't. That's a lie, Lara." She crossed her arms, her body hardening in defense. I could feel the wall going up between us, the space that forms when a teenager suddenly decides you are the enemy. But I wasn't mad. I was hurt. "Lara," I said quietly, "I'm not angry because you skipped a few classes. I'm hurt because you didn't tell me. Because just a few days ago, we had this moment, this real conversation about trust and communication and how I'll always be here for you. And then this happens." She looked down at the rug, silent for a while. Then she sat down, right there on the floor, her back against the couch. "I just couldn't," she said. Her voice was smaller now. "After Kaio, it was too much. He and that girl, they walk around holding hands, kissing in front of everyone like nothing ever happened. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to see it. So I left. I went to the park. I just sat there. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to make it real. And that was it. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't laziness. It was grief. And it was hitting her harder than she knew how to process." I took a breath. That strange mix of anger and tenderness clashed inside me, but tenderness won. "Sweetheart." I moved closer, lowering myself to the floor with her. "I understand. I really do. But running away doesn't make the pain disappear. And shutting me out, that doesn't protect you. It just makes it worse. You don't have to hide your feelings from me." She nodded, slowly. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. And there it was, the crack in her voice, the crack in the wall. "I just didn't want you to think I was weak." "Lara," I said, brushing her hair back from her face, "you are the farthest thing from weak. Do you hear me? You're brave. You feel everything so deeply, and you keep going. That's not weakness. That's strength." We sat like that for a while, in silence, in softness. Then she asked, "Am I grounded?" I smiled. "Not today, but tomorrow. You're coming to the school with me. We'll talk to them. Together." She looked up. "Together?" "Always." And she smiled. That same tired, crooked smile I'd loved since she was a toddler. "You're so clingy, Mom." "Absolutely," I said. "And one day, you'll thank me for it." Maybe she will. But right now, I'm just grateful she still lets me be close. Even if it's messy. Even if it's hard. And if you are enjoying the story, help us out by subscribing to the channel and giving a like. The next morning, we went to school. But what I didn't expect was what I found there. Because this wasn't just about Kaio. And it wasn't just about missed classes. Something bigger was going on. And it changed everything. It was supposed to be a routine conversation. One of those parent-school meetings where you sit across from a guidance counselor, nod through some polite warnings, sign a paper or two, and leave with a promise to keep an eye on things. I didn't expect anything major. Honestly, I thought I already knew the story. Girl gets heartbroken. Girl skips class to avoid the guy. Girl gets caught. Mom shows up to advocate, apologize, repair. But that wasn't the story. Not even close. We sat side by side in a cramped office that smelled like dry erase markers and old coffee. Lara bounced her knee the entire time, arms crossed tight against her chest, doing that thing where she tries to shrink into herself. Like if she's small enough, she won't have to answer any questions. The school counselor, a woman named Camilla with kind eyes and the cautious tone of someone who's had 100 of these conversations before, greeted us gently. "I'm really glad you both came," she said. "We just want to make sure Lara is okay. We've been noticing some patterns." "Patterns?" I asked, immediately alert. "She's been skipping not just classes," Camilla said carefully, "but lunch periods, group activities. She spends a lot of time alone, and when she is in class, several teachers have said she seems distracted, unusually quiet. Some even use the word withdrawn." I glanced at Lara, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. "She's always been more on the introverted side," I said. "That's not new." "True," Camilla nodded. "But this is different. There's been a change. And we've also received a few anonymous notes from other students expressing concern." I blinked. "Concern about what?" Camilla folded her hands slowly. "Bullying. That word. That single, heavy, 5-letter word knocked the air out of my chest." "What?" I said, almost too loud. "She's being bullied." Lara flinched, then buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders began to shake, silently. No tears yet. But I knew that posture. It was shame. Pain. The kind you hide. Camilla kept her voice steady. "We're still piecing it together. It seems like there's a group of students, mostly girls, who've been targeting her online and at school. Comments, laughing behind her back, sharing screenshots of things. We don't know the full extent yet, but it started around the time of her breakup with Kaio." I couldn't believe it. I should have seen it, and yet I hadn't. I'd been so focused on the kiss, on the skipped classes. on managing my own emotions, my own grief, that I missed hers, and she was drowning. I turned to Lara. "Why didn't you tell me?" She shook her head. "Because you'd make it worse." Her voice cracked. It was the first thing she'd said since we walked in. "You'd come here and yell, or post something online, or try to fix it, and I didn't want to give them more reasons to laugh at me. They already think I'm pathetic." The word gutted me. Pathetic. My daughter said that about herself. Camilla jumped in gently. "Emma, sometimes teens don't tell their parents because they're trying to protect them, or they feel like their pain will be minimized, or they're just scared. It doesn't mean they don't trust you. It just means the world they live in is louder, faster, and harsher than we remember." I nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Can I see it?" I asked Lara quietly. "What they've said, what they've posted." She hesitated. Then, after a long moment, she pulled out her phone, scrolled, handed it to me, and there it was. Screenshots of cruel messages, group chats where they talked about how thirsty she looked kissing Kaio, memes made from a photo someone had taken, without her knowing, of her crying on the school steps, the comments, the laughter, the emojis that mocked her pain. I felt rage, but more than that, I felt helpless. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, barely able to look at her. "I didn't know it was this bad." She nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "I didn't want to be dramatic." God, that word. How many girls learn to silence themselves because they're told not to be dramatic? "I'll do whatever it takes," I said, "but not to make it worse, just to make it safer, okay?" She nodded again. This time, she reached for my hand, and in that moment, we weren't mother and teenager at war. We were two humans, one young, one older, facing a broken piece of the world together. Camilla offered next steps, a formal report, investigation, meetings with the other parents, support group options. But I barely heard the logistics. All I could focus on was the fact that my daughter had been suffering in silence, that every moment she shut her door a little harder, stayed in her room a little longer, answered in one-word texts. It wasn't rebellion. It was survival. We left the school in silence. In the car, she finally spoke. "You still think I'm strong?" I looked at her, eyes full of more love than I knew how to express. "I think you're the strongest person I know." She didn't reply, but she held my hand the whole drive home. And for the first time in weeks, I think we both understood something very clearly. She wasn't pushing me away because she didn't need me. She was pushing because the world was pushing her first, and she needed me to stay, even when it was hard. Especially then. The thing no one tells you about motherhood is that it changes your identity in layers. First, you're someone's everything. Then you become someone's background. Eventually, if you're lucky, you become someone's safe place. That was the transition I felt happening in real time. After we left the school that day, Lara didn't want to talk much, and I didn't push. I let her sit with the quiet, because sometimes silence is a safer container than all the well-meaning words in the world. But I watched her, closely. I saw how she flinched every time her phone buzzed, how she locked it when I walked into the room, not out of secrecy, but out of exhaustion. I saw how she opened her wardrobe 3 times before picking a hoodie that hung low and covered most of her face. I saw how she walked a little smaller, laughed less, and I realized this wasn't just sadness, it was shame. That's when I knew I couldn't stay still anymore, so I made some calls. I didn't scream. I didn't post anything dramatic on social media, though believe me, the urge to post a photo of her toddler face next to those vile screenshots with a long, raging caption was strong. But I didn't. I stayed focused. I called the school. I asked for a meeting with the principal. I spoke to Camilla again. I printed the messages. I asked for the bullying policy. I asked for it in writing. Because here's the thing. Being a modern mom doesn't mean being passive. It means knowing when to hold space and when to take up space. And this was one of those moments where I had to stand tall. Not just for Lara, but with her. But the most important thing I did wasn't at the school. It was at home. That weekend, I made pancakes. Real ones. Not the instant mix. The kind she used to ask for on her birthdays. I left her plate exactly how she liked it. 1 pancake, chocolate chips in a smiley face, syrup on the side. When she came into the kitchen, still groggy and hair wild from sleep, I looked at her and said, I miss you. She blinked. I'm right here. I know. But I miss the you that doesn't have to carry all of this. I miss the lightness in you. She sat down, slowly, looked at the plate, smiled, just barely. I miss her too, she whispered. We ate quietly, and after a few bites, she started to talk. Not about the bullying, not directly, but about everything else. About how school feels different now. About how people stare like she's contagious. About how some of her old friends haven't said anything. Not even a, how are you? And that somehow hurts more than the mean comments. She said, it's like I'm radioactive. Like everyone's afraid to be near me, in case they catch the shame too. I told her, you're not the one who should be ashamed. And she said, I know, but knowing doesn't help. That sentence broke me a little, because it was true. Knowing the psychology, understanding adolescence, reading every parenting article on emotional safety, none of it mattered in that moment. All that mattered was that I didn't let her carry it alone. So I started doing something new. Every night, before bed, I'd go into her room, just for a minute. No questions, no advice. I'd sit on the edge of her bed and say one sentence, you're not alone. The first night, she rolled her eyes. The second night, she said, I know, Mom, in that tone teenagers use when they're trying to act like they're too cool for emotion. By the fifth night, she looked at me and said, can you stay a little longer? I stayed. The school responded, slowly. The students involved were spoken to. Meetings were had. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Lara was offered a counselor. She said she'd think about it. Progress doesn't happen in grand moments. It happens in whispers. It's in the moment she asked if I wanted to watch a show with her again. It's in the moment she wore her hair down for the first time in 2 weeks. It's in the moment she answered a message with a small smile and didn't hide the screen. She was rebuilding, quietly, painfully, bravely, and I was learning something too. We can't protect our children from the world, but we can make sure they know, without a single doubt, that they never have to face it alone. And just when I thought the worst might be behind us, something else happened. One night, Laura walked into the kitchen with a strange look on her face. Not fear, not sadness, but something. Mom, she said, there's something I need to tell you. And the next words out of her mouth, they changed everything. Again. She stood in the kitchen doorway with that look, the kind that makes a mother's heart freeze just for a second. Not panic, not devastation, but something heavier than usual. A look that meant, I've been thinking about this for days, maybe weeks. Mom, she said, there's something I need to tell you. I dried my hands on a dish towel and turned to her slowly. Okay, I said, keeping my voice calm. What is it? She hesitated, looked down, took a breath. Then she said it. I think I want to switch schools. For a second, I said nothing. It wasn't the sentence I was expecting. It wasn't even something I had imagined she might say. But as soon as the words left her lips, everything clicked into place. Of course she did. Of course she wanted out. And suddenly, I was flooded with this strange mix of grief and relief. Grief because this school had been part of her life for years. It was the place where she learned to write cursive, where she won her first spelling bee, where she lost her first tooth in class and got a standing ovation from her friends, but also relief, because she was finally asking for what she needed. And that was huge. Okay, I said softly. Let's talk about it. She looked surprised. You're not going to say no. I'm not going to say no just to keep things familiar. I care more about how you're feeling than what school logo is on your report card. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. Not this time. I don't feel safe there anymore, she said. Even with the teachers watching things more closely, even with the kids getting spoken to, it's not enough. I feel like I'm stuck in this version of myself that I don't like, and I want out. I nodded. I let her speak. She talked about the way people looked at her like she was fragile glass, how the silence in hallways was worse than the laughter, how every day felt like performance, pretending she was fine just to survive, how tired she was of pretending. And then she said something that nearly undid me. I know switching schools won't fix everything. I know some of the pain is in me, not just in that building, but I want to try. I want a fresh start. I crossed the kitchen and hugged her, tight. You have no idea how proud I am of you. For what? For asking for what you need. For knowing yourself enough to say, This isn't working. She exhaled, a deep, shaky breath that sounded like someone putting down a burden. Over the next 2 weeks, we started the process. It wasn't easy. Transferring schools in the middle of the academic year came with red tape, forms, awkward meetings. But we did it together, and something happened during that time. Lara started to come back. Not the old Lara, not the little girl version I sometimes longed for. A new Lara, more aware, more self-protective, but also braver, softer, wiser. She helped pick out her new backpack. She organized her own schedule. She even asked if we could go shopping together for a new pair of jeans, something she hadn't done in months. She was still healing, but now she had hope stitched into her steps. And me? I was learning that motherhood doesn't mean standing in front of your child to block every arrow. Sometimes it means walking beside them as they choose a new path, even when that path means leaving behind what's familiar. On her first day at the new school, she stood in the mirror, adjusting her collar, checking her reflection. Then she looked at me and said, "I'm scared." "You should be." I smiled. Scared means you're doing something brave. She gave a half laugh, half sigh. Then she hugged me. "Thank you for not making this harder." I squeezed her back. "Thank you for trusting me." As we pulled into the school parking lot, she reached for the door handle, then paused. "Mom." "Yeah? You remember that day? When you saw me kissing Kaio?" I laughed a little. Hard to forget. I thought that was going to be the scariest part of being a teenager, kissing someone. But it wasn't. It was all the stuff after. I nodded. That's true about life, too. The moment you think is going to be the hardest usually isn't. It's the stuff you don't see coming that really tests you. She smiled. Then she got out of the car, and just before the door closed, she said something so simple, so ordinary, but so full of meaning that it made my throat tighten. "See you after school." Not if I make it. Not if it goes okay. Just see you. And in that moment, I realized she will be okay. Not because I fixed everything, but because I stayed, I listened, I learned, and because she's becoming someone strong enough to start again. If you like the story, let us know by leaving a like and your comment. And don't forget to subscribe to be part of this community of reflections and love. Thank you very much and see you next time.